Well, this sort of leads well into my ask Cole question for you for the
Ooh,
week,
here we
because
go.
this has been getting a lot of play, not just locally, on a little bit nationally now too. Uh, do you believe that the 2021 Cubs are the worst team in Cubs history? And either way, why or why not?
Well, see, that's a tricky one because there's no way you would consider that with their overall record. They're going to have a much better record than their worst teams in history, just because they had a legitimate Major League Baseball club, maybe not as good as we had hoped, but they were at least a mediocre baseball club through the first four months of the season.
True.
What we're seeing now is, I mean, these we're basically watching the Iowa Cubs play right now. So I would say the second half, this might be one of the worst teams, but I mean, we've seen it for a month basically how bad they can really be. I think, I mean, I sat in the bleachers watching some of those teams in 2012, 2013, 2014 before they started to turn the corner. And those were some
Right.
fucking horrendous teams. So I'm not going to say 2021 is, just because they're going to have the record that's going to be better than most, just because they actually had some legit players on the roster for most of the season.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the just to give you why the talk is they
Yeah, I'm curious.
may or may not be the worst Cub team ever. They're uh the first team since 1954 to suffer two double-digit losing streaks in the same season.
Yeah, and one of those happened while those major league players were there that I
Yeah,
was just
what
mentioning. So that's
the
interesting.
the core three, the big three, whatever the
I thought it
you
was a
know
core four you like to make fun of for
it
years.
was the core four for a long time. At some point, I think it was like the core seven. I don't know. Then
I've
some
seen
pieces got
headlines. I've seen headlines about this rebuild, and they say they're calling it no core, which I like a
no
lot
core.
better.
Or
Yeah,
yeah, how about it's just like a rebuild, and we see how. Let's not
exactly.
put pressure on anyone or whatever.
Let's have zero core.
Yeah, how about no core? How about
I
just
like that.
nine decent players? How about that? Uh, some a little bit better than others, but they play as a team. And then they set the new home losing streak record this year at 13. Um, and they're saying that um, I think what it boiled down to, why this is turning into a narrative now, is I think because of having that good run, I think what the narrative should be, this is probably the most disappointing
Ye-
Cubs season in Cubs history.
I would agree with that.
Or maybe even second, because I mean, out of like going to the playoffs and not advancing, like maybe the Marlins. But in a regular season, just let's remove the playoffs from it. If you just look at
Uh,
regular season, like this could be possibly the ups and downs of it. Like maybe that's would be a better narrative for it. But these
yeah,
are
I've
all
got
the
a couple.
statistics that are being pointed out as to why record wise it won't be the worst Cub season in history, but it is the worst Cub season in history.
I would put the '04 Cubs as the most disappointing, coming off the horrific Bartman Marlin series. That next year they are expected to take off again and win the World
Oh
Series.
yeah, that was when they went into the white to play the White Sox. The White Sox beat up on them, and then they never recovered from
Well,
that
yeah,
point on.
and they had a lead in the last week of the season and shit the bed so badly in the last week that they didn't even make the playoffs. I think they lost out to the, maybe it was the wild card to the Mets, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So I would call that the most disappointing season. The other part, I would say disappointing teams. I would say it's disappointing for the organization, and I've talked about this every time, every show probably, but the ownership kicked the legs out from underneath this team
Yeah,
back in December. So
true.
I'm almost I wouldn't call this disappointing because I've been expecting this, and I think most people have been expecting this to happen all season long. I was kind of pleasantly surprised with how well they played back in May, to actually look like contenders and be in first place for that long. So I'm not going to make this historically a historically disappointing team. It's a historically disappointing actions by ownership and the front office. I guess I could put it that way. But it is a good.
Yeah, I know, I do like that. That is probably the best way to put it, because I kind of was I reading these, like Gordon Whitmire did one. I think the Athletic actually did one too, and it was, I was kind of like, well, I mean, anyone who didn't expect a sell off at the trade deadline
was being naive.
was being naive.
Yeah.
And I think you and I had talked about how you were like in this weird in between state a few months back where you were like, well, I kind of want to move on and get the next stage of this team going, because now
you knew it was going to end.
It was going to end anyway. So if they don't trade any of these guys, most of them end up walking away.
Exactly.
So
at least one way or the other.
At least in a couple years, and more so with some of the other trades, you'll be seeing results on the field immediately next year. With Madrigal, and I think Hoyer actually got a win the other day for you guys in a relief appearance on the walk-off. So,
yeah, that story is to be played out.
That story's to be played out. So, like,
to be horribly disappointed suddenly in this season, I think is stupid. They haven't been paying attention, or they're just trying to. People like Gordon Whitmire are trying to get some clicks. But I do like your question. I think you like my answer. So
I do like your answer, because like as much as like you look at it, you look at it statistically, there's all these other elements to this season that were not covered in those articles, especially about they shied away from what ownership did to start the season, like you said. I mean,
that's the first thing I thought of. So
yeah, that's the first thing I always think of. Like,
these people need to call us before they start writing these fucking ridiculous articles.
You basically told your team, we don't think we can win this year.
Yeah,
that's absolutely what you told the team and the manager.
That was the message.
That was the message.